POPGOES Evergreen is the FNAF fan game I'm looking forward to the most, and after playing through POPGOES Arcade, the teaser to it, I'm even more excited for the release. But I hear some of you, what is POPGOES Evergreen going to be about? What's the lore? What are the characters? Do we know anything? Well, today we're going to go over everything we know about POPGOES as a series, POPGOES Evergreen, POPGOES Arcade, and we're even going to do speculation as to what the new game will entail. Characters, lore, and everything in between. And spoiler alert, because I'm always right. Check out the Sonic video if you doubt me. Don't check on the FNAF DLC video though. I was totally right there, just don't worry about it. First, let's go over the history of the game series to see where we're at now. The series POPGOES takes place in the FNAF universe, but only taking into account information up to FNAF 3, as an attempt to explain and expand upon the lore from these games. It also takes place in the same universe as another FNAF fan game, Five Nights at Candy's, but there's a lot to say on that one as well. It could be its own video, so for now, we'll just leave it as is. On April 1st, 2016, POPGOES Arcade was released as a teaser for the upcoming POPGOES title. In it, we play as a kid within the POPGOES Pizzeria, playing Weasel World. This is a fully playable RPG game, but through some glitches, you can get a peek into the hidden lore of the series. We're going to fully go into the entire lore of the series later, so for now, just accept that this game gives you some glimpses and peeks into the lore of the next upcoming full title. On June 26th of the same year, POPGOES was released, a FNAF fan game with a lot of talent behind it. It had an interesting gameplay loop where only two things could truly kill the player: a panic attack caused by a hallucinated jump scare, or the creation of an odd, unpainted Toy Bonnie lookalike on the table behind you. This is one of my favorite FNAF fan games, like, ever. It's actually the first FNAF fan game I reviewed in Horror Derves way back in the early stages of the channel. It's a rough video though, so if you go to watch it, please be kind. After this, a sequel to POPGOES was planned as POPGOES 2: The Dead Forest, a continuation of the story after the secret ending of the first game. However, the game was unfortunately cancelled. We do have some really cool art from the game, but we'll get into why later on in the timeline. The next year, April 8th, 2017, POPGOES Arcade 2 was released as a teaser for the upcoming game POPGOES Reprinted. In it, we actually play as Phone Dude from FNAF 3, trying out one of the arcade cabinets inside of Fazbear Frights right before the opening. Just like with its predecessor, there's a fully playable RPG in here, with a secret ending to get lore about the franchise. However, this secret ending not only tells us about a specific antagonist of the series and their motivations, it also has the greatest twist ending / jump scare I've ever seen. I know, right? Anyways, the next planned game in the POPGOES timeline is POPGOES Reprinted. This would have been a collection of POPGOES 1 and 2, specifically a remake of the first game called POPGOES 1: The Black Rabbit, and the first official release of POPGOES 2: The Dead Forest. This would have been a fully expansive collection of both games, but unfortunately it was cancelled as well. Again, we've got some really cool art from these games and a lot of the story and lore that was supposed to be in it, but I'll go into how we get that later in the release timeline, because we'll get there. A few years later in 2020, on June 12th, POPGOES Arcade released, a different POPGOES Arcade. This was a reboot of the 2016 POPGOES Arcade and a prequel to POPGOES Evergreen. It was a brand new retelling of the story with a new game to be played, POPGOES: The Dead Forest, named in homage to the cancelled sequel. Like the previous arcade games, this includes a fully playable RPG with a secret ending available to be accessed in order to find out lore for the upcoming game. It was released in 2022 on Steam, fully updated, with additional content as well as an entire second game. It's about half as long as The Dead Forest, called The Machinist, also with a full game, but secret endings for additional lore. So that catches us up to the present, right? Not quite. In between the arcade release and the arcade port to Steam was released a very important thing for this timeline: POPGOES Archives. Released on January 26, 2021, it contains all 4 playable games in the 2016 series: POPGOES Arcade, POPGOES Arcade 2, and the previously cancelled and unreleased POPGOES Finale. This was a great send-off to that era of POPGOES, and included an immeasurably important resource to the lore finders of the series: POPGOES Memories. To quote the project, POPGOES Memories is a presentation made by the members of POPGOES Reprinted. It's dedicated to all fans of POPGOES who want to know more and see more of the universe we created and the characters inside it. It consists of a collection of brand new renders and descriptions for every single character ever made for POPGOES and POPGOES 2. A lot of the information for the lore I found in my research comes from this collection. Don't get me wrong, we had hints and information to the lore throughout the games, but having canon details all in one package with renders, it's just so important and immeasurably helpful. So that brings us to now, fresh after the release of POPGOES Arcade and anticipating the eventual release of POPGOES Evergreen. What could we have in store for the next game? What do we already know? Well, luckily, we have a lot of tidbits about the lore and contents of the game from the creator and director, Kane Carter, on Twitter. He's had several posts on Twitter opening up to the fanbase and answering any questions that get posed, within reason, not trying to spoil anything. Through this, we've gotten clarification on some previous points in POPGOES and glimpses into the future of it. Most importantly for the story, he stated that the lore of the 2020 series of POPGOES games will be distinct from the original POPGOES run in 2016. To be clear, he did mention that major elements of the story will still be there, such as Simon being the purple guy, Bonnie having a connection to Black Rabbit, Fritz being the bite victim, but a lot of the details and middle elements that were a bit confusing and vague are being reworked and massively overhauled, trying to make a more cohesive lore and making it less cryptic. Wait, I hear you. Slow down. Who the hell is Simon, Bonnie, and Fritz? Well, I guess the best way to go over the reworked lore of POPGOES is to go over what the original lore of POPGOES was. We can't know what changes are being made until we know the source material they're being changed from. So let's go over the entire lore and story of the POPGOES 2016 series. And just as a heads up, I tried to use only canonical and confirmed information here, but like any FNAF fan game timeline, I had to make assumptions. So some of this is speculation, and I also skipped over some very minute details that I know have been scrapped, and we'll get into which ones later. So this is just going to be major plot points and mostly confirmed information, with a little bit of speculation on the in-between. We'll get more into the nitty-gritty afterwards, so for now, here is my interpretation of the story of POPGOES. At its core, POPGOES is a story of two brothers, Simon and Jeremy Fitzgerald. Simon was believed to be a negative yet lucky person. Jeremy, a very positive person, but incredibly unlucky. Simon Fitzgerald was seeking how to extend human life, with his idea being that consuming the blood of children could do just that. To go after this substance, he captured and killed children to harvest their blood at his job at Freddy Fazbear's, with the use of the Spring Bonnie suit. After only being seen in the shadows, rumors started spreading of the Purple Man. The craziest part is, he was right. It worked. Eventually, he managed to give himself an extra life, sort of. But those murders had repercussions that he wasn't ready for. Because in this universe, when someone is killed, they become a ghost. He was adamant that creatures who were killed by the hands of another creature would get a second chance at living, as a specter or as a ghost, something like that. The victim of his murders went on to possess the animatronics nearby, including the toy animatronics at the new Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Cut to his brother Jeremy. Jeremy Fitzgerald was a super fan of everything FNAF, and eventually got the opportunity to work at new Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Unfortunately for him, luck wasn't on his side. While Simon was the one who killed the children at these establishments, the haunted animatronics could only seek out what he looked like. Jeremy, who worked as a night guard and looked just like his twin brother, unluckily fit that bill. Toy Bonnie attacked him, causing the bite of 1987, taking out his frontal lobe and nearly killing him. Jeremy would have died if not for an anonymous donation of a huge amount of blood. That anonymous donation being the large amount of spare blood Simon had left over from his experiments, as he did care deeply about his brother. He didn't necessarily even like killing. To quote the guy, "I never gained any pleasure from it. I didn't care. I just needed what they had, so I took it from them. Do I regret the pain I've caused? Some of it." Eventually, people found out about Simon's true identity, and the campaign Find Simon began, though unsuccessful. Simon went into hiding, but still wanted to know whose blood specifically worked for him. After Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed down, he went back to dismantle the old animatronics to try and collect the DNA. However, he found that those sprites had been trapped all this time, and once the animatronics were dismantled, they were set free. Cornering him in a back room, he entered the Spring Bonnie costume he used to murder them in. However, due to its age and moisture, it snapped shut, killing him inside. But not quite, because his experiments were successful. He ended up half alive and half dead, being able to interact with the spiritual world, but able to move around within the physical one. He was sealed up in that back room for some time, until eventually the people behind Fazbear Frights find him and mistake him for just a beat-up, stinky animatronic and installs him in their haunted house attraction. A few nights in, when the owner is playing the arcade cabinet inside the attraction, Simon, as Springtrap, manages to contact him through the machine, explaining why he did what he did, before eventually attacking and killing him. The fire at Fazbear Frights does manage to burn most of him away as well, leaving him as just a disembodied head. Cut back to Simon. After recovering from the bite, he was different. For starters, to avoid the media spiral, he changed his name to Fritz Glade and moved to England. As far as how he was doing as a person, he was more serious, cold, and had a severe memory loss. He was also haunted by nightmares of the toy animatronics. However, he was a wonderful inventor, one of his inventions being a dream catcher for his recurring nightmares of the puppet, a mechanical scarecrow he called Strings. The idea behind it being, since the puppet was controlled by strings, having a figure using said strings should be able to work. And it did. He then worked on several others, but when he found that his second dream catcher, Buttons, didn't work in preventing his nightmare of JJ, he scrapped the project. During this time, he also had a daughter, which he named Bonnie Glade, after the toy animatronic that almost killed him. He hoped that doing so would help him to decouple the name from his trauma by associating it with something he loves. Eventually, he created POPGOES Pizzeria and reused his old failed Dreamcatcher animatronics to create the new POPGOES cast of animatronics: POPGOES the Weasel, Sarah and Saffron the Squirrels, Blake the Badger, and Stone the Crow. During this time at an auction, he finds and buys all of the remaining objects from Fazbear Frights, including the disembodied head of what was his brother Simon in the Spring Bonnie head. He buries it to let his brother have a proper burial, and sets off to bring him back to life the only way he knew how: robotics and AI. Not remembering much about Simon's actual appearance, he looked up the old rumors and speculation about the Purple Man. This led him to create a tall, lanky purple figure, but a skeleton since he was dead. He embedded an illegal AI he developed in Simon, and added a protocol called Evolution to have the robot learn at a rapid pace so he could catch up. However, immediately in fear of what he'd created, but not wanting to scrap the robot as he saw Simon as his actual brother, he chained Simon to a wall so that it could not hurt anyone or him before activating it. Simon learned quickly and slowly became more and more angry at Fritz for creating him yet chaining him to a wall forever. At the same time, Fritz was still not totally sure what his past looked like, and was still haunted by his nightmares. He wanted to delve deeper into his own psyche, so Fritz took the same AI used to make Simon and implemented it into the only successful dream catcher he had: Strings. He also renovated it with the ability to act as a security guard for the pizzeria, and added the function Curiosity instead of Evolution, in the hopes that it would help uncover parts of Fritz's memory still lost to him, thus creating Sex Strings. The side effects of Curiosity involved panic attacks, sensory overload, and some sort of hallucinations. One last thing before the actual POPGOES game starts, but something incredibly important. Bonnie Glade, daughter of Fritz, found an old toy Bonnie mask from the items purchased from the auction, and while wearing it, snuck up behind her father, who was holding an axe. In a fit of panicked PTSD, he took that axe and killed her, chopping her into 6 pieces, immediately coming back to and mourning his mistake. Thus, the beginning of POPGOES 2016. Sex Strings, the AI, is tasked with watching over the animatronics at night. The main task of the player is to prevent POPGOES from creating Black Rabbit, an unpainted, unconnected version of Toy Bonnie with the 3D printers around the facility, all the while keeping the panic meter of Sex Strings down. If POPGOES is successful, Black Rabbit will attack Sex Strings, inducing a panic attack. But what is actually going on in the background here? Well, in between nights, we see an 8-bit minigame of each of the POPGOES animatronics walking around a map shaped as a mind, and when they approach their respective toy animatronic counterpart, the minigame ends. This is the game's representation of Fritz explaining to Strings that the other Dreamcatchers didn't succeed in stopping the nightmares. This is all well and good, but there's a secret canon ending to this game. Enter Simon, who is able to communicate with Strings due to their shared AI. Simon wants to kill Fritz, and would be able to do so if he convinces him to allow him access to Weaselware, the programming behind all of these creations. However, he knows if he tries to convince Fritz and fails, Fritz will never allow him access. So instead, he practices manipulation on Strings. He'll reach out to Strings throughout the nights.
Simon says that.
And when Strings has those imagination 8-bit minigames of why the Dreamcatchers weren't successful, Simon instead shows Strings that he would be able to make the Dreamcatchers better into Lux animatronics of light, and they would be successful in stopping Fritz's nightmares. After a few nights of this, Strings trusts Simon and is convinced that he can help Fritz. Simon thanks Strings for the practice, and then manipulates Fritz into giving him access to Weaselware. Simon told him that he could use Weaselware to bring back Fritz's recently dead daughter Bonnie. Fritz immediately does so, and when Simon is granted access, he prints Black Rabbit in Fritz's office, which immediately kills him. Simon is then freed and walks out to see Strings, and through Strings' camera, himself for the first time. Strings has a panic attack and the game ends. There's one key detail that links all of that plot together though that I left out, and it's the fact that whether or not Simon knew, and it's implied in the later cancelled games that he didn't know, he didn't actually lie to Fritz. He did bring Bonnie back, sort of. Black Rabbit was actually haunted by Bonnie. Let's touch back on Bonnie's death, shall we? Bonnie didn't die on accident. She knew what she was doing. Keep in mind, she was 22 at the time of her death, not some little girl. As per her entry in POPGOES memories, she wanted to die and she wanted to kill her father. Bonnie was a ghost hunter and a paranormal analyst in her free time. She was adamant that the afterlife existed and that she could have her happiest day, but she also believed that the quickest way to reach her nirvana was not to kill herself and not to die in an accident, but to be murdered. So she scared her dad, wanting to be killed, and she haunted Black Rabbit to give him his happiest day as well. So Black Rabbit is really just Bonnie trying to get all of her loved ones together forever in the afterlife as ghosts. And thus, the story of POPGOES. Alright, that was a lot.
And it deserves a subscribe, but I get it, I'll be here.
Now that we're all up to speed on the 2016 version of the POPGOES story, what do we know has been confirmed to be in the news story, be taken out from the news story, and what's wishy-washy? And I just want to mention at the top before we get too deep into this, I say confirmed loosely, okay? This is tweets from the director and creator. This is what he said, but development is hard. Development changes as you make games. Games change as you develop them. Don't get mad if anything that is said in these tweets isn't in the final game. All right, just be cool, okay? Just be cool. Like I mentioned, Kane confirmed on Twitter that major elements of the story are still there. Quote, Purple Guy is still Simon, Fritz is still bitten, Bonnie still dies, etc. But the little details are heavily rewritten and it makes a lot more sense. Same goes for the gameplay. It's the same in theory, but refined massively. Further confirmed information about Simon is that Simon is a huge part of Evergreen and his design will be surprising. He's much more of a hulking piece of machinery now, and Simon returns in Evergreen, but with a totally new design and story. It's confirmed that by the time we reach the machinist in POPGOES Arcade, Bonnie is no longer haunting the cabinet, meaning she was in the first place. Also, her story has been massively reworked as well. Okay, so those are the things that were confirmed that are staying, but are being changed. What do we know that is confirmed to be being taken out? Well, straight away, the Lux animatronics, Gravestone, and Gemstone have been scrapped due to being useless to the lore, but are replaced with some new stuff. Furthermore, in POPGOES, there's additional canon FNAF animatronics that aren't in the POPGOES series, like a lamb, a coyote, an owl, but they're not being brought back, as they were a part of a very unnecessarily complicated part of the POPGOES lore. We also have confirmation that new characters are going to be added, as well as the toy animatronics. However, we have no information on the new characters, and we were told that the toy animatronics won't be there for main night gameplay, but they'll be there somewhere. We also have one very large question mark. Strings. Every time Kane has been asked whether or not Strings is in the new game, he neither confirms nor denies it, and mentions that we'll have to wait and see who the protagonist of POPGOES Evergreen is. Alright, with all the Twitter information out of the way, let's delve into the actual game we have in front of us, POPGOES Arcade 2022. Let's see if it can tell us anything about what POPGOES Evergreen's story is going to be. And by the way, spoiler alert for this game, I promise, go play this game if you haven't played this game. It's like $5 on Steam. It's so fucking good, okay? Just play the game, but spoilers. In POPGOES Arcade, we play as POPGOES the Weasel, being tasked to take on the corrupted animals in the surrounding forests to find out the source of the trouble and obtain the keys to get to the castle in the north. Once beating corrupted BB, he warns us that things will come back from the dead and fight us again. We do, and it does. As we play, the undead versions of Chica, Foxy, and Bonnie seem less into it, with one of them even saying that they didn't want to do this. Eventually, we meet Dead King Freddy, who explains that his plot was to kill everybody in the forest so they could all live eternally as ghosts. This is already ringing alarm bells, but if you find a glitched wall in order to obtain a broken key and use it on the bird bath, the game shifts. Directive: collect.
Sushi.
Collect what? And suddenly, you're able to obtain pieces of Black Rabbit. Once complete, you can head to the well and are suddenly transported to a mashup of the locations of the FNAF 3 minigames, the ones that allow the player in FNAF 3 to get the happiest day. Walking through, you're transported into the Bonnie boss fight again. If you attack at all, the game ends and you're met with this fantastic bad ending. I have a feeling some... Oh, that's cool. Was that not what we were supposed to do there? However, if you just sit there and block long enough, Bonnie Glade comes through. She explains herself a bit and lets you know that she wasn't in control and was trapped, but now that she's calmed down a little, she can feel the arcade cabinet beginning to loosen. She presumably moves on to something else, and then we're able to play the next game, The Machinist. In this game, a new villain, the Machinist, dug tunnels under most of the previous map, and we have to go defeat a bunch of robotic recreations of the main POPGOES cast, until eventually we meet the main boss, Morse the Mole. We beat him and that's all well and good. But there's a few secrets hidden here. First off, if you glitch through the blocked off areas of the old game, you'll find glitched keys that are still there. Using them, you can gain access to the castle area clearly not meant to be accessible. Once there, you can burrow down into an area not yet meant to be accessible, getting deeper and deeper until you're in a file system that has access to one of the old camera recordings. You then can get 3 shots of Cam 7, showing the new Blake and the new server room. Then, an empty server room, and then this. Oh! A body of someone with blood and a toy Bonnie mask. Finally, if you 100% this game as well and then go refight the final boss, then you're rewarded with this cutscene, showing off a teaser of the look of POPGOES Evergreen. Okay. There's like a piece of paper. There's a piece of paper on. Ooh. Oh, hey POPGOES. He looks so good. I love him. He's going to the 3D printer. That makes sense, because he 3D prints Black Rabbit in the main game. Ooh, is this going to be the office for Evergreen? This looks so good. Use your WeaselWare phone to play awesome games here. Yo, this looks sick. I'm hyped. I cannot wait for POPGOES Evergreen. Oh shit. First off, that was pretty fucking sweet. But what does this actually tell us? I think it's possible that the body we see in Cam 7 is none other than Bonnie Glade. I don't actually know if Bonnie is still going to be related to Fritz. We don't have confirmation on that yet, but I want to say Bonnie Glade so you don't think I'm talking about Bonnie the Bunny. Think about it. In the Dead Forest, we meet Bonnie Glade finding out that she's still conscious and that her research was right. Now that she's calmed and collected, she moves into the pizzeria. Well, according to that file in The Machinist, that happened 1 day ago. This lines up perfectly. That means yesterday, someone with a Bonnie mask was killed. And today, there's a ghost of someone named Bonnie in the arcade cabinet. Like, this is, it's there. What else can this game tell us? Well, I think it's showing us the major themes in POPGOES Evergreen as well, specifically attempting to cheat death and the various ways that you can accomplish it. 2 distinct ways. In the first game, it's very clear that Dead King Freddy is trying to make people live forever by killing them, as if you are murdered, you turn into a ghost, therefore kind of living forever. In the second game, the Machinist is trying to create perfect versions of these people to replace them, as robots. Those robots presumably are going to live forever as well. We know that Simon and Fritz are still both in this story. They've just been changed. Their backgrounds have been altered. I think I've cracked what that change is. These 2 games are representative of the ways these 2 brothers approach immortality. Fritz is the Machinist. He creates the robot Simon to replace his brother. Simon is Dead King Freddy, trying to prove immortality by killing children and looking for their spirits. Now, what will Simon be doing in POPGOES Evergreen? I don't exactly know, but I think I know what he won't be doing, and I think I know what he'll look like. Take a look at that secret boss again, the Mangle. I think this is similar to what Simon is going to look like. After all, it's been confirmed that he looks more like a heaping mass of machinery. Well, you see what I mean? We're about to move into a heavily speculative area, so take everything I say here with a grain of salt. This is me just shooting blanks out. I don't know who we're going to be playing as in POPGOES Evergreen, but I'm pretty sure it's not Strings. I think we're playing as a human. The main reason being, I think the dream catchers, the idea of that, has been scrapped entirely, at least the Scarecrow versions of them. I think to make the story more streamlined, the animatronics in POPGOES, Sarah, Saffron, Blake, and Stone the Crow, are the dream catchers. It was just immediately them. They were the things he made to prevent nightmares, not the scarecrow then turned into animatronic, just the animatronic. Furthermore, I don't think Simon is going to be trying to manipulate the player anymore. Kane confirmed that the 8-bit minigames and the Lux animatronics are not going to be in this game. That's because I don't think we're going to see Simon's manipulated hallucinations showing us that the Lux animatronics could work. We'll just see the actual Dreamcatcher animatronics face off against the toy animatronics in some way. It seems like they're going to be real models. Maybe we actually hallucinate this. Maybe we're playing as Fritz and we're seeing his hallucinations. I don't know, but I think we're actually going to see them come head to head, not in an 8-bit minigame. Now, to address the body lying in the middle of the room, I've got no idea on Bonnie. I can tell she's dead, and she seems to have been researching this exact outcome. We can even see this on these glitched flashing images, as they read, "Can you hear me? Help, trapped, where is happiest day, Dad, and Bonnie." So it seems like she was conscious and knew what she was doing, but was then confused that when after death she got stuck in an arcade cabinet, not just immediately in this nirvana that she wanted. I assume Black Rabbit is still going to be trying to kill Fritz so that Bonnie and Fritz can live happily in the afterlife together, but I have no idea, frankly. Anything I speculate past that would just be making shit up without evidence. Once again, POPGOES Evergreen is shaping up to be amazing, and coming most likely second in the Fanverse game series after FNAF Plus. Hopefully we'll get to know more soon, as I believe I heard there's going to be sharing information or some more screenshots or something at the FNAF Direct. In case you didn't know, that's a fan game showcase being hosted by GameJolt at the end of October. Not sponsored by them or anything, I just think it's really cool and you should check it out. I know I'll probably make a video or two based on some of the stuff we see. POPGOES is one of my favorite FNAF fan games of all time. And I'm so excited to be seeing this new, polished, updated version of what we're going to be able to see. However, if you want to know my thoughts on the original, check out this video, but be kind. I was really bad at making videos back then. Like, I'm getting the hang of it now. This is rough. As always, shout out to the best patrons, the Toasted Slices, Emberisk, Zenith, Tommy Woodyard, Isle, Stormachow, and Raven Eris. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, Slices.